What's up, pre-algebra students? Welcome to Flack Math. Today we're going to review practice test 23. I hope you've done it already, but we're going to go through each question. Make sure you're good to go for the test. So stick with me. Let's do this.
Flack math! Give me some math and I'll give you some flack. Flack math!
All right, here we go. Practice test 23, number 1. Says the sum of twice a number and 17 is negative 19. Find the number. Okay, so you're going to get 2 points for this. The first thing, I want you to translate this into algebraic language. All right, what does the sum of mean? Well, that means an addition problem, okay? So sum means addition, and twice a number means times 2, so we're going to add something here. So twice a number. So let's do twice a number. That just means 2n. Okay. And then and 17 is, how do you say is? Equals negative 19. All right. So now we're going to solve. So remember, when you're solving equations, you want to get the variable by itself. So let's get rid of 17 minus 17 minus 17. And you're left with 2n on this side. And then you have negative 19 minus 17. Well, what is that? Well, let's write it out. Minus 17. All right? Well, remember, when you're subtracting with negative signs, it's confusing. So chicken scratch, bok bok. So really, this problem is negative 19 plus negative 17, which is you're adding the negatives. So negative 36. All right, now divide by 2, divide by 2. N equals negative divided by a positive is a negative. 36 divided by 2 is 18. Boom. Done. Good job. All right, let's try number 2. The number of bacteria increased 210% overnight. Oh, that kind of hits close to home. Hopefully that doesn't happen here. All right, so number of bacteria increased 210% overnight. If there were 75,000 bacteria yesterday, how many bacteria were there this morning? Okay, so what does it mean to increase by 210%? Well, we're gonna find 210%. How do you say 210%? 2.10 or just 2.1 of 75,000. So if we do that first, what do we get? All right, don't be afraid to use your calculator. Don't be ashamed. 75,000. So 157,500. All right, so don't move on. You're not done yet. Here's the deal. You just found 210% of 75,000, but it increased 210%. So you found 210% of 75,000, but that's how much it increased. So now what do? You add it to your original 75,000. So this 157,500 is how much it increased. So what do you have now? Well, add that to your original 75,000 and you get 232,500. That's a lot of stinking bacteria. Wash your hands. All right, number 3. We can do this. We can do this. Number 3. The ratio of musicians to actors was 2 to 3. If there were 72 actors, how many musicians were there? Okay, when you don't know, tic-tac-toe. Here we go. Joe, guy. So we're gonna do, this is our ratio column. And then this is our actual number column. Okay, we got musicians. We've got actors. So the ratio of musicians to actors, and the order is very important. So if you say musicians to actors, the 2 goes with the musicians, and the 3 goes with the actors, okay? Now, we'll use this for total, but we don't need the total in this problem, so let's ignore it for now. All right, if there are 72 actors, well, where does the 72 go? 72 goes right here, and it says how many musicians were there. All right, so what do? Fish method, yay. So here's our ratio. If you want to write out your ratio, you can. 2 is to 3, as M for musicians is to 72. So when you do your fish method, you can multiply 72 times 2 divided by 3. So that equals, let's see, 144 divided by 3 is 48. So 48 musicians. We need more musicians in the world. Don't we? Don't we? Don't we? Don't we? Don't we though? Okay. All right, number 4. Ooh, look at all this in number 4. Okay, we're gonna just fill it in there because we can. So we're changing decimals to fractions and percents and things like that. So let's do that. How do you change decimals to percents? Well, you just move the decimal over 2 places. So this is 67.5%. Woo! All right, well, how do you change it to a fraction? Just say that number, 675 thousandths. Reduce it. I think you could probably take a 25 out of both of them. And you get 27 40ths. Cool. All right. Now, how do you change a fraction to a decimal? Well, all you have to do is divide. 2 divided by 5. Okay, add a decimal. 5 goes in 24 times. So here's your decimal. And how do you change it to a percent? Move it over 2 places to 40%. Not too bad. All right, one more. I think this is the easiest one. So how do you change a percent to a decimal? Go the opposite way. So you're gonna go bloop, bloop, to the left, to the left, to the left. Is that a song? I think it's some of that crazy rap music kids these days. All right, so how do you say 20%? 20%. Reduce it to 1/5. Boom, there's number 4. That was awesome. Yay. All right, number 5, here we go. Finding the volume of a right circular cylinder. Volume of any cylinder or any prism really is just area of base times the height. Okay, well, how do you find the area of the base? Well, the base is a circle. So how do you find the area of a circle? That's right, pi r squared times h, which is 8. All right, let's figure out what our r is. Let's see, can you guys read that? That's a 5. All right, so pi times 5 squared times 8. Do the exponents first. So pi times 25 times 8. And it says to use 3.14 for pi. Well, 25 times 8 is just 200. So let's do this math. 3.14 times 200 equals 628. And the dimensions are in feet. So volume is cubic. So 628 cubic feet. That's a big cylinder. All right, moving on. Moving right along to number 6. Last month's phone bill was $150. This month's phone bill is $204. What percent of last month's phone bill is this month's phone bill? Okay, so it went up. So you're gonna have a percent. What percent of last month's phone bill was this month's phone bill? Let's just translate it. How do you say what percent? Well, what percent is just P. How do you say of? Remember, of is just times. Okay, how do you say last month's phone bill? Well, it tells you what last month's phone bill is, $150. So this is 150. All right. Now, how do you say is this month's phone bill? Well, is equals, and this month's phone bill is 204. So there's your equation. Solve for P. Get P by itself. All right. So what do? Let's divide both sides by 150. Let's do that math. Don't be afraid to use a calculator. 204 divided by 150 is 1.36. Is that our answer? Is that our answer? Is that our answer? No. Why? Well, this P reminds us that we're going to change this to a percent. So that equals 136%. And that kind of makes sense because this month's phone bill was higher than last month's phone bill, so it's going to be more than 100%. Okay. Notice that it didn't ask for a percent increase. It just asked for what percent. So it's going to be higher than 100. All right, number 7, I'm going to just do it right over here on the test. Number 7, we're going to graph on a number line. Well, first of all, this is kind of confusing. So how do you write that? This just says not greater than. That's what it says. Well, there's an easier way to say that. Remember the trichotomy axiom. Trichotomy axiom. Yes, the trichotomy axiom. Here's what the trichotomy axiom says. One number is either greater than the other, less than the other, or equal to the other. So if it's not greater than, then the only thing this eliminates is this guy right here. So it's not greater than. It could be less than or equal to. Well, how do you say less than or equal to? X is less than or equal to -1. All right, now how do you graph that on a number line? Well, here's like your 0, your 1, your -1. Less than or equal to means you need to fill in the dot and you're gonna shade to the left. So pretty. Okay, does that make sense? You can do it like that. You can also, I've seen people just do it like this too, where they just put a dot up here and they just put an arrow above it. That works too. Okay, good job. Moving on. Number 8. 170% of 40 is what number? Let's translate that. How do you say 170%? Well, percents we don't use, so we're gonna say 1.7. We just move the decimal over two places. So how do you say of? Is times 40 is what number? Okay, so now we solve for that. All we're doing is just cleaning that up there. So n equals 1.7 times 40. 1.7 times 40 equals 68. All right, that works. 170% of 40 is almost twice as much as 40. That makes sense. All right, what percent of 40 is 72? How do you say what percent? P. How do you say of? How do you say of? That's times. And how do you say 40 is 72? 40 is 72. Okay. There's your equation. You'll get a half a point for that and the other half for getting this right. So how do you get P by itself? How do you solve for P? Divide both sides by 40. All right, that cancels. And you're left with whatever 72 divided by 40 is, 1.8. So that's what P equals. P equals 1.8. So what percent is that? 180%. Boom, that works. Okay, last one, 380%. Okay, well that's, instead of 380, we're gonna move the decimal over two places, 3.8 of what number? How do you say of what number? Times n, or you could just write it right next to it because that's what multiplication is 570 equals 570. So how do you get n by itself? You divide by 3.8. Divide by 3.8. So n equals 150. So that's 8C. All right, so this looks a little messy, sorry. So number 9 says this, negative WX minus W, all right, X equals -4, W equals 3. So we're just gonna plug these guys in for X and for W. So this guy goes there and it goes there, all right? So let's use red for X and that way we can do it. So remember when you're plugging stuff in, and we'll use purple for W, okay? When you're plugging stuff in, it's nice to use parentheses, especially if it's negative. So this one, see, we're not replacing the negative sign, so that negative is still negative. W is now 3, so we're gonna say parenthesis 3. And then X is now -4, so parenthesis -4. And then this minus sign is still the same, and then another W, which is our 3. All right, well, let's clean this up a little bit. This is -3 times -4. Remember, we're gonna do multiplication and then subtraction. What's negative times a negative? Positive. 3 times 4 is 12, so this is positive 12 minus 3. Well, what's 12 minus 3? 9. Good job. All right, number 10. Okay, so we've got this little expression here. I'm gonna rewrite it a little bigger so you can see it. And I'm gonna use cursive S because it's cooler. Okay, so this is S to the T. All right, so let's plug in, so what's our R? So R is 4, S is 16, and T is 2. All right, let's plug in our R. So that's the 4th root of S, which is 16, plus S, which is 16, to the 2nd power. Okay? All right. Let's do our powers and roots first, and that's really all we have, and then this addition problem we'll end with. So the 4th root of 16, I know you want to say 4, but it's not 4. Remember, the 4th root is what number do you multiply by itself 4 times to get 16? Actually, it's 2, because 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 equals 16. Plus, well, what's 16 times itself? This is not 32. 16 times itself. 16 times 16 is 256. 2 plus 256 is 258. Boom. That was exciting. Moving on. Number 11. This is kind of like a previous problem. A cylinder is a lot like a prism. So this two-dimensional drawing shows a base of a right solid that is 11 meters tall. Find the volume of the solid. Okay, so it's this little trapezoidy looking thing. There are 11 of those stacked on top of itself. So there's 11 layers. Okay, it's like a really nice, yummy cake. Trapezoid cake is what it is. So how do you find the volume of a prism or a right solid? We're gonna find the area of the base, just like we did with the cylinder. And we're gonna multiply it times the height. Well, how do you find the area of the base? Well, this might take some work, but let's just separate this base into 2 shapes here, a triangle and a rectangle. Well, the dimensions of this rectangle are 5 by 4, so that's 20. But what are the dimensions of this triangle? Well, it is by 4 there, but how much is this right here? Well, if this whole thing is 8 and this is 5, then this has to be 3. Okay? So the area of that triangle, remember the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. Well, this base is 3 and the height is 4. We divide it by 2, so we get 6. So this little guy is 6. So what's the area of the base? Well, 6 plus another 20 square units. So this is going to be 26 times the height. Well, what's the height? 11. It's 11 meters tall. All right. So that's going to be 286 cubic. Remember, volume is cubic meters. Boom. Okay, number 12. Moving right along. Find the surface area of this right triangular solid. Okay. So I think the easiest way to do this is to just list out the faces and then find the area of those faces. Okay, so let's look at the faces. It looks kind of like a tent. So the front of the tent, where you go in, there's the front. You also have the back, which looks exactly like the front. Then you have the left side. Then you have the right side. Then you have the bottom. It might be helpful to just draw out these shapes here. The left looks like a a rectangle like that, a rectangle like that, and the bottom is this pretty large rectangle, okay? So let's find the dimensions. Well, it looks like the dimensions of that triangle, 8 and 8, so that's 16. And then what's the height? It looks like 15. So same thing here, 16 by 15. It looks like those rectangles are 11 by 17s on the left and right. And then the bottom, it looks like it is 16 by 11. I'm gonna make this a little different so it doesn't get blended in there. Okay, so let's find the area of that. No problem. Base times height divided by 2, so 16 times 15 divided by 2, plus another 16 times 15 divided by 2, plus an 11 by 17 rectangle, plus another 11 by 17 rectangle, plus a 16 by 11 rectangle. Okay, all right, let's just do the math. 16 times 15 is 240 divided by 2 is 120, plus another 120, plus 187, plus 187, plus 176. Add those up, we get 120 plus 120 plus 187 plus 187 plus 176 equals 790 square inches. Remember, it's square because it's surface area. Okay? Good. Awesome. Moving on. All right, number 13. This looks like some similar triangles. So this guy is similar to that guy, which means all the sides are proportional. All right, so if you set up a little chart, you can totally do this if you want to. You could say this is the small triangle, and you can say this is the big triangle, okay? And then you're gonna need another side here because there's 3 sides. So let's say you have a left side, a right side, and a bottom, okay? So your left of the small triangle is 6, and your left of the big triangle is 8. So your right of your small triangle is 15, and the right of your big triangle is R. And your bottom of your small triangle is 12, and the bottom of your big triangle is S. So you have to figure out what R and S are. Okay, well look, you've got a proportion right here. So to figure out R, remember you can do the fish method, 15 times 8 divided by 6. So R equals 15 times 8 divided by 6 is 20. So R equals 20. So you can use this proportion to find S. Look, you still have that 6 and 8 and 12 and S. So if you want to rewrite that, 6 over 8 equals 12 over S. So you can do the fish method if you want, or you can notice that, look, 6 times 2 is 12, so 8 times 2 is 16. Boom. But 12 times 8 divided by 6 would have still given you 16 as well. Okay? All right, number 14. We're gonna solve. I'm gonna rewrite this, -2.5 x minus 2 3/4 equals 1 1/8. First rule, mixed numbers are dumb. Let's change them to improper fractions, no problem. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna change that to an improper, change that to an improper, change that to an improper. Remember, 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, and it's negative, so that negative stays the same. -5/2 x minus 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 is 11/4 equals 8 times 1 is 8, plus 1 is 9/8. Okay? All right, now we solve this fractional equation the same way we solve any equation. Let's get rid of this guy first, and then we'll get rid of that -5/2 later. So get rid of minus 11/4 by adding 11/4. Okay, so we're left with -5/2 x over here equals, well, what's this? Well, 11/4 is actually 22/8. Okay, so now we can add that. 9/8 plus 22/8 is 31/8. All right, now what do? Well, this negative 5 halves is multiplying by the x, so to get rid of multiplication, we divide. That's multiplication's enemy. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 5 halves. Now, a lot of you at this point will try to copy dot flop, and you're going to copy the negative 5 halves and you're going to flop the 31/8. Don't do that. That's wrong. Remember, you flop what you're actually dividing by. You're not dividing by 31/8. You're dividing by negative 5 halves. All right, so let's do that. 31/8, copy dot flop. So flop the negative 5 halves to negative 2/5. All right, see if you can cross reduce. You can a little bit. 1 and 4. So this ends up being a negative 31, because remember, you still have that negative. 31 times negative 1 is negative 31, all over 20. That's it. And you can change it back to a mixed number if you want, if you're into that sort of thing. Negative 1 and 11/20ths. But that is good enough. Good job. All right, number 15. We're gonna graph. Ooh. Okay, and we're gonna use 0, 4, and negative 4 for x's, for x values, okay? So let's set up a little t-chart here, x's and y's, and we're gonna plug in these 3 numbers. So we're gonna let's plug in 0 first. So when x is 0, you're basically substituting that x for a 0. So this is y equals 0 plus 4. Well, what is 0 plus 4? Is 4. So when x is 0, y is 4. What about 4? Well, when x is 4, let's see here. That means you're going to have y equals 4 plus 4. So that equals 8. So when x equals negative 4, let's see, y equals negative 4 plus 4. Well, what happens? It cancels out to 0. So here's your 3 points. So your 3 points are 0, 4, 4, 8, and negative 4, 0. All right, so remember, when you plot points, you're gonna go left or right first and then up or down. So let's graph our first point. This is right or left 0, so right 0 and then up 4 because it's positive 4, so up means positive. So right 0, up 4 is right there. All right, what about 4, 8? Well, this is right 4 because it's positive 4, and then up 8 because it's positive 8. Right 4, up 8 is right there. All right, last point is negative 4, 0. Negative right negative 4 means left 4, and then up 0. So you're gonna go left 4, and then you're not gonna go up or down at all. So you have 3 dots here. Now you can connect these points, and it's gonna look awesome. Let's go back up to number 16 here. All right, between which 2 consecutive integers is the square root of 68? All right, well, if you try to figure out the square root of 68, let's see. Let's see, the square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 36 is 6. The square root of 49 is 7. The square root of, what's the next perfect square? 64 is 8. What's the next perfect square? 9 times 9 is 81. The square root of 81 is 9. Okay, so it looks like it's happening between these 2 spots. So what 2 integers is this in between? It's in between 8 and 9. Okay, you can just say between 8 and 9, or you can write it the cool way. This is how the cool kids are writing it. 8 is less than the square root of 68 is less than 9. If you want to be cool, you'll write it like that. If you want to just be average, you can just say between 8 and 9. But it's okay. You don't have to hang out with the popular kids. All right, number 17. I'm just going to write it over here. So when you're squaring something, you're just multiplying it by itself, right? So 2/5 times itself equals multiply the tops, multiply the bottoms. The shortcut is really it's just 2 squared over 5 squared. That works, okay? All right, let's do number 18. So we are going to do inside parentheses first. So it looks like there's some parentheses here. We're gonna do that. So remember that minus should be a plus negative. That makes it a lot easier. And then we're gonna do this parenthesis and we're gonna chicken scratch in there 2 plus -3. So let's do that. Everything else we're not gonna touch, we're gonna leave it alone. So -2 times -5 plus -3 plus 4. So when you put these armies together, the -5 and -3 together, you get a -8. Fighting against a +4, you're gonna get a -4, okay? All right, well, when you put these two armies together, they're both on the same side, so it's gonna be a -10 times a -5 in that parenthesis, okay? So let's see. You're left with -4 here minus, what'd you end up with over here? -10 times -5 is +50. Okay, so let's do that math. Remember, we do multiplication next, so we're gonna do this guy. Negative times a negative is a +8 minus 50. Well, what's 8 minus 50? If you need to, you can chicken scratch. So now 8 is fighting against the negative army of 50. So that comes down to -42. Okay, a couple more and we're done. Number 19, here we go. 19a says the 4th root of 16. Well, didn't we just do this one? Yeah, remember, this is not 4. It's not 16 divided by 4. It's what number times itself 4 times equals 16. Well, that would be 2 because, and this is not part of your answer, this is just an explanation, 2 times itself 4 times equals 16, okay? Look at B, square root of 49. Well, this is, when you don't see a number, it's the square, so what number times itself twice, or what number multiplied twice by itself equals 49? Well, that would be 7, okay? Number 20, and we're done after this, okay? So let's see what we need to do first. Parentheses first. So we're gonna do that first, and we're gonna do this first. And then inside of there, we have another little parentheses, so we need to make sure we do that as well, okay? So since there's parentheses inside of parentheses, we're gonna do that first. So -2 minus 4 is -2 plus -4, so that's -6 times 3. And then everything else is the same here. All right, now we're gonna do what's red here. We're gonna do this first, so we're gonna chicken scratch that because that's confusing. So then we have a -5 times, well, let's do this math inside of here. -2 plus a -5 combined to a -7 army fighting against a +5 army gives you a -2 minus, what's -6 times +3? A -18, all right? All right, we still have a little bit of multiplication to do, so let's do that. We do multiplication before subtraction. -5 times -2 turns into a +10. Minus -18, well, that's just plus +18, right? When you chicken scratch that. So 10 plus 18 is 28. Boom! That's it, guys. That's practice test 23. You guys should do fine on test 23 form A. If you have any questions, let me know, but you got this. Good job.
Flack math! Give me some math and I'll give you some flack.